Okay, so plan is today to have a very brief intro to spreadsheets for year 9, and this will only be hopefully 10 minutes. First thing is, probably most people don't know where to find Excel. So if you're using Windows 8, or even if you're using other operating systems, if you go to the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you'll see the Start menu, and just start typing in Excel, and Excel should become visible. What I've done is I've done a right mouse click because I'm using Windows 8, and I've actually added it to the startup menu, and I could also pin it to the taskbar at the bottom if I wanted to. So all that's been done, and I'm just going to run Excel from the beginning. We're going to start a blank workbook, and as soon as we open it, you're confronted with a whole lot of letters and numbers and all this other stuff. What you'll notice is that this actually is called a workbook, and if I just plus and plus and plus and plus, what I'm doing here is actually adding things called worksheets. So in theory, you could have one workbook, and we'll probably do that for year 9 science. We'll have one workbook, and we'll call it spreadsheets 9 science, and then as we add that would be a workbook, sorry, as we add worksheets to it, we'll actually name each of the worksheets. So the first one I'll call that one terminology, and the next one I will say is just we'll call that practice, just for fun. We'll plug the spreadsheet over there. We're going to do another one, and that will be the bouncing ball experiment that we're going to look at some variables with. All right, back to terminology. All right, so as you can see, if you click anywhere in the spreadsheet, the top left-hand corner will give you what's called a cell reference. So these are all actually cells. So this is cell A1, this is cell D3, etc. You can scroll down, and we are, I think it's 44,000 rows down and about that many to the right-hand side. So we're only the top left-hand side of a spreadsheet. This is actually huge. Spreadsheets are designed for using or doing calculations with large quantities of numbers. So I wouldn't want to see everybody or anybody bring up a spreadsheet just because it gives you a nice grid. Obviously, if you're in a Word document, you're going to insert table, and that's what you're going to be doing in a Word document. So I guess what we'll do is we'll give this a title. We'll call this one terminology, and we'll just keep it all together. That's the first heading, and then cell. We need to understand what a cell is. We've talked about a workbook, and then we need to know what a worksheet is. Oops, I'll just cut that, and I'll move it up to there. We'll just paste that into there. Worksheet, workbook. We're going to have something called a formula, and we want to talk about a function within a formula. We're going to eventually talk about fill down options, and we're going to do fill right options. You can type this in as we go if you want to, if you can multitask. So we've got cell, workbook, worksheet, fill down, fill right. We've got a fixed cell reference is another one. Double click referee and reference. I should have turned spell check on, but that's okay. We'll leave it as it is. You can see what I'm doing is I'm also clicking on this little tab between the cells. I could do the same thing down here. I can click and drag, and I can make a cell huge if I wanted to. Double click it, and it will just resize it to the maximum of whatever the text is in that area. Okay, so inside of obviously this cell, I've got the word cell, so we can put text into a spreadsheet. We're going to define each one of these. We'll come back and finish it, but I'm going to actually go in and we're going to set up a practice worksheet, and I'm going to call this, we'll call it Mark Book. Now the reason that it's going to sort of hold some student grades, so we'll give it a title, and we'll just call it, these are my students over here, and we'll say that this is their test score, and I'll call the students A, B, C, D, E. Whoops, A, B, C, D, E. So they could be my make-believe students. oops, I've missed out here. I haven't got a test score that I can put in. If you do this, that selects the entire row, and if we do right mouse click, we can go to insert, and it will insert a cell or row there for us. Alright, now obviously we've got text in a cell. I'm going to put in some numbers now. So we're assuming that the test is out of 20, say, and we'll give this guy 12, 13, 14, give him 15, 16, that's enough. And they are what we will call our make-believe results. So we've got inside of these cells here, we've actually got the results for student A, B, C, D, E, and so on. And I'm going to work out the average, but I'll show you several different ways of using formulas in a spreadsheet to work out quantities. Alright, we can do all sorts of other things, and I will just do a bit of editing at the moment. All the same tools, all the border tools that fill cell, all those things are the same in Office is what they are, well, I don't want to say Office, in Word is what they are in Excel. So you've got these tools to make things, your borders highlighted if you wanted to do that. And I'll just keep that one there, that'll do. And we will do, let's just go back, something like that. It's better. Start again. We'll just do that one there. And I will just put, yeah, I'll just do that one. And then I'll keep these results here separate. And of course you don't, this is just fancy stuff, you don't have to worry about all that. It just simply makes it look a little bit better. Okay, the average. Now as you know, anything, well, you might not know, but anything that we do in a spreadsheet, if you're going to do a calculation, you put in the number, or you have to start off with a symbol equals. So as soon as we put an equals in here, that's the cell obviously, and it thinks we want a sum first. These are actually a list of functions that we'll talk about in a minute. This is what I see students doing. If I want to work out the average of these 5 tests, they go and get the calculator and they type in 12 plus 13 plus 14 plus 15 plus 16 divided by 5. They give me the answer, and then they put into this cell here the answer. That completely defeats the purpose of using a spreadsheet. We want the spreadsheet to do all the calculations for us, and this is called a formula. So what we're going to do here, and we're going to do it as if we're not so smart yet, we're going to type in all the numbers, and we're going to basically, as if we're going to use a calculator. So we'll put in 12 plus 13 plus 14 plus 15 plus 16. So they are my numbers, and hopefully people understand how to calculate an average. And we're going to divide it by 5 for the 5 students in the class, and we're going to say tick, and it works out the average for the class of 14, which is wonderful. Okay, but we have a few issues, because if I've done an error and this student comes to me and says, Mr. Campbell, you actually marked me too hard, I really should get 18. I'll say, okay, well I'll fix it up for you, mate, no worries, here we go, 18. But if you look at the number here, it doesn't change. The average for the class doesn't change. Let's assume this kid here gets 18. The average doesn't change. So we've actually simply done exactly what you do in a calculator, which is not what you do in a spreadsheet. Alright, let's have a look at what we call a formula for a spreadsheet. Now, what we want to do is we want to add these 5 numbers together, and then we want to divide it by 5, which is exactly what we did here, but we don't want to put the numbers 12, 13. We actually want to use what's called the cell reference. And the cell reference here is B5, and the cell reference there is B6, and this is B7, B8, B9, and of course B1. They're bananas. B1 and B2 is empty. But anyway, so we've got B5 down to B9. They're all cells. So again, if I want to do a calculation, it's going to be equal. And I'm going to click on the first cell, and notice not 12 comes up, but the number B5 comes up. And I'm going to go Shift plus, and I'm going to go click on the second cell, and I'm going to click, this is left mouse click on the third cell, and again, where do we go up to? B8, and I'm going to go click for B9. Now I'm going to still use a bracket. The BODMAS still applies even in a spreadsheet, and I'm going to divide it by 5. So what this does, you notice it's color coded, so it now gives me what color corresponds to what cell. So that's pretty neat. And we're going to go tick. All right, and that gives me the real average using a formula. And so if I change this kid's, what happens to this kid? This kid comes whinging to me and he says, Mr. Campbell, I have to get 18. I say, okay, give me $50 and we can arrange for that. But anyway, I do it because it's the right thing to do. So 18 he gets, formula. So what we want to do now is just press enter, and what you notice is the average for the class changes. Pretty important. In this instance, let's assume that this kid actually he cheated. He gets a 0, that guy, and the results go right down to an average of 12.8. So simply putting the data in from numbers, which is okay, doesn't work though if we change it, so that's not with the spreadsheet idea. This is getting better, but the ultimate is to use a function. Okay, functions. Now, if we go back up to the cell, we can start typing, but typically we click in the cell, equals. So we're going to do some calculations. If I click on this tab, you notice there's a whole lot of functions. We are only going to use around about 5 functions, if that, of the 200, 300 functions that there are. So we're going to work out the average. Now, if you click on average, it gives you, it's pretty smart actually, it gives me what's called a range, a number range. So it says, do you want to average B4 down to B11? Now if I just drag that over, here's B4, that's the 20, and B11's down there. That's not what I want to average. Okay, I actually want to average starting from here, and that cell is actually B5, and I want to average from B5 down to B9. That's the range. We call it a range. The way that we do that is simply this. So we click inside of there, click the first number, and we should be able to, and we'll just close that, just do it again. We'll say equals average, and it will come up with that for us, average. Click the first one and just drag down, holding left mouse button, drag down, and we get a range B5 to B9, and that will give me the exact same number. Okay, now notice it's 12.8, of course, because we've got a formula that we used, but I can make my life easy, and it doesn't matter. In this instance, if I add another row, I would need to come back to the formula and recalculate it, because it wouldn't be divided by 5 if I added a student F. Then I'd need to change my whole formula. This one here, I don't. It will automatically change the range for me as well as I insert a row. Alright, so we've got a formula, we've got a function within the spreadsheet, we have numbers, and then of course we can do formatting within a spreadsheet as well. So I might want these to be centered. It's exactly the same as any Word document. The tools are the same. You know, I want to fill that up and make it look fancy for some reason. And so you do all this at the end, okay, once you've actually set up your spreadsheet data. So that's just a very brief intro, and we'll come up and we'll do some more practice on this later as we learn more about spreadsheets. Now, file, save as. I should have done this right at the beginning. You're going to save this, and don't worry about where I'm putting it. Okay, I've got a system that I'm sort of using. I will put, well, I've done it already. So I'm going to call this spreadsheets, and of course if you were following my naming conventions, I guess what we should do is put our name in it. So I'll put in my name, okay, spreadsheets01 science. We're only going to use the one spreadsheet or workbook, and we're going to add the worksheets as we go. Of course, You could have multiple if you want to, but we want to try and open up the one file and we'll build on that file. Alright, save, and there it is. We'll talk about printing and formatting the sheet later, and we're going to come back and you're going to now fill in what you understand by each one of these. The only 3 you won't be able to do are these because we haven't done it yet. We'll do that in our next video.